So, let's talk about something powerful. What if the answer to a huge modern banking problem was actually a forgotten piece of American history? We're going to dive into an analysis that argues for bringing back postal banking, and not as some brand new experiment, but as a restoration of a system that actually worked for millions of people. Let's get into it.
I want to start with just one number, $40,000. That's what this analysis says a minimum wage worker can lose over their entire lifetime just in fees to cash their own paychecks. Think about that. It's like a hidden tax just for being poor, and it's really the heart of this entire debate.
And this slide, wow, it just lays the whole problem out, doesn't it? The analysis paints a picture of two totally separate financial systems. In one, you've got big banks borrowing from the Federal Reserve at around 4.5% APR. In the other, you have people who are completely locked out of that system, forced to go to payday lenders who charge, get this, over 400% APR for the exact same thing, getting access to money.
So, how in the world did we get here? Well, this first section of the analysis really digs into the huge cost of just trying to use cash and why so many millions of people are basically pushed right out of the traditional banking system.
And you can see here, this is not a small problem. The source makes it really clear this isn't some niche issue. You've got 6% of US households that are completely unbanked, no account at all. Then, another 14% are underbanked. That means they might have an account, but they still have to use these predatory services to get by. You add that up, that's a quarter of the entire country that's being left behind by the financial system.
And all that exclusion, it's making someone a whole lot of money. The analysis says that the alternative financial services industry, we're talking check cashers, payday lenders, all of them, they pull in $173 billion from working families every single year.
But here's the real twist in the analysis. The argument is that this problem, it hasn't always been this way. In fact, America had a really popular, really effective public solution that worked for more than half a century.
So check out this timeline. From 1911 all the way to 1966, the U.S. Postal Savings System let you open a basic account at any post office. At its peak in 1947, it had 4 million depositors. It was a rock of financial stability, especially for working-class and immigrant families. It even survived the Great Depression when thousands of private banks were collapsing.
And this quote from the source really gets to the heart of it all. Banking was treated as a public utility, not a private consumer product. The whole idea was that having a safe place for your money is essential infrastructure, like roads or clean water.
So if it was so great, why did it disappear? Well, according to this analysis, it wasn't because the system failed. Not at all. The claim is that as things like consumer credit started to become really profitable in the 60s, the private banking industry lobbied Congress hard to shut down their public competitor. And just like that, they captured all those working-class customers for themselves.
Okay, so to really get why the system we have today is so lopsided, the source brings up this really interesting economic idea called the money waterfall. It's officially called the Cantillon effect. And the core idea? It's actually pretty simple. When new money gets created, it really matters who gets their hands on it first. The people at the top of that waterfall get the most benefit, while the people at the bottom only get the leftovers, usually after prices have already gone up. And this is a perfect picture of how that waterfall actually works in practice. According to the analysis, the Fed pumps new money into the big banks, right at the top. Those banks then lend it out, which drives up the prices of assets like stocks and houses for the people in the middle. The money only trickles down to regular wage earners way later. And what about the unbanked? They're in what the source calls a drought, completely cut off, feeling all the pain of inflation with zero of the benefits.
And let's put some hard numbers to this whole waterfall idea. It really shows you the massive gap in what money costs. A big bank gets it at the source for about 4.5%. A regular person using a credit card pays around 24%. But an unbanked citizen, someone forced into using a payday lender, they're paying an insane 391% or more. The source doesn't pull any punches. It labels them the victim of this system.
All right, so we've seen the problem, the history behind it, and the economic theory. So what's the solution? Well, the thesis doesn't just diagnose the problem, it proposes a way forward, a modern-day restoration of the public banking option.
And it's not just one big idea, it's a step-by-step three-phase plan. Phase 1 is about immediate help, offering things like check cashing and bill pay at cost. Phase 2 is the really big one, creating digital wallets for every single citizen, held at the Fed, but with post offices as the real-world place to access them. And Phase 3 adds services to protect people, like fee-free overdraft and ways to build or repair credit. This comparison really hits home, right? It frames the stakes perfectly. The source argues the old system was built for public stability and universal access for everyone. But the system we have now, it's designed for private profit, and that has led to banks disappearing from the very neighborhoods that need them the most.
Now, you know a big idea like this is going to have some pushback, right? Of course. So the analysis spends a whole section taking the most common counterarguments head-on.
All right, let's tackle the big one first. The one you hear all the time. Isn't creating a government-run banking option just socialism? The source's response here is to completely reframe the question. It argues that providing essential infrastructure isn't socialism, it's just a core job of government, like building roads. It also points out, hey, this system existed alongside private banks for 55 years just fine. And then it flips the whole argument around with this killer question. If giving the public basic banking is socialism, then what do you call giving banks subsidized loans from the Fed at 4.5%?
Okay, what's the next hurdle? It's the post office itself. We hear constantly about how it's losing money. So how could it possibly handle a national banking system?
Well, the analysis claims that this whole narrative is based on what it calls a manufactured crisis. See, back in 2006, Congress passed this really strange law that forced the USPS to pre-fund 75 years of retirement health benefits in just 10 years. I mean, no private company has to do that. The source says if you take away that impossible accounting rule, the post office is actually operationally profitable. And let's not forget, they already did this successfully for 55 years.
And then there's the big one, the one that makes everyone nervous after 2008, taxpayer money. Is this just setting us up for another big bailout?
The proposal is actually designed to completely avoid this risk, and the key is incredibly simple: no lending. The source makes this crystal clear. Without loans, there's no risk of people defaulting. This isn't a speculative bank. It's just a safe system for savings and transactions, and it would be funded by tiny merchant fees, not our taxes.
And all of this brings us back to the core moral and economic challenge that the thesis leaves us with. It cuts through all the logistics and all the arguments and asks one incredibly powerful question. How do we justify a system that charges our most vulnerable citizens 400% APR for access to the same money that we give to big banks for 4.5%? Yeah, that's a question that really sticks with you.